second?
So moved.
Second. Motion and second. Any public comment on this resolution? Not, we'll go to roll call vote. Mr. Foley?
Commissioner Anderson. Commissioner Canal. Commissioner Robinson.
Aye.
Commissioner Simmons.
Aye.
Commissioner Thompson.
Aye.
Commissioner Williams.
Aye.
Resolution 1280 is passed.
Okay, resolution 1281, requesting city council approval to refund bonds in the electric, gas, water, and wastewater divisions.
Commissioners, we've been to you before, and we're here again today telling you that we have an opportunity for refunding that will save our customers significant money, and I'll recognize Mark Walker to summarize that for you.
Commissioners, you may recall, I guess it was last spring, we came before you with a refunding that occurred last fiscal year. I guess that was one of the financial highlights of last fiscal year, was refunding $95 million in outstanding bonds. And that resulted in a debt service savings of about $15 million, or $12 million on net present value. At the time, I guess I thought to myself that that's probably the end of the refundings for some period of time, but I have been proven wrong. We have identified another refunding opportunity, a substantial one, for some bonds that were issued back in 2005 and 2006. In total, almost $172 million in bonds, and it's across all four systems, but the biggest portion of that is wastewater, a bond issue we had back in 2005 of $140 million. But $172 million of the bonds, again, across all four systems, they were sold in 2005 and 2006. Based upon current market rates, refinancing would result in debt service savings of slightly over $19 million, or a little over $13 million on a net present value basis. So a significant opportunity awaits us. I do want to point out, though, that the bonds to be refunded are not callable until 2015. And what that means is that the refunding would be in the form of an advanced refunding, which is permitted by the IRS. But in those cases, we go ahead and issue the refunding bonds. The proceeds are placed in escrow accounts and invested in risk-free government securities, or special type of securities actually called slugs that are designed for that purpose. And so there would be a level of interest earned over the escrow period. But at the end of that time, or at the call date for the bonds, the escrow agent basically pays off the bondholders. From KUB's perspective, and this would happen probably when we do the refunding or the closing on the refunding bonds, once all the required funds are placed into the escrow, the bonds are considered legally defeased. They're no longer considered an obligation of KUB. They no longer appear on our balance sheet. That's a little bit of how an advanced refunding works, but I wanted to make that clear to you. Another important point with the new bonds that will replace the old bonds, we're not extending the maturities. We're not extending the life of the debt. Actually, we're going to shorten it up just slightly. Also, as far as the state goes, the state comptroller's office, state law requires that we submit a formal refunding plan for their approval, and we have done that for each division. We actually submitted the plans on October the 8th. In accordance with law, they have 15 days to render an opinion on the plan, so we are expecting to hear something from them here in the next few days, certainly by the end of next week. And as you know, City Council authorization is required for any debt of KUB issues in excess of 5 years of maturity, so we would plan to go to City Council. At this time, I've targeted a November 13th council date to request approval, provided the board agrees and approves Resolution 1280. And if everything goes as planned, our proposed sale date would be early January, or actually probably mid to late January. You may recall that the board's also authorized new money bonds for electric, gas, and wastewater, and we're in the process of working through that right now. I actually went to council this past Tuesday. They approved it. We anticipate selling those bonds probably early November. So this proposed refunding would come right shortly after that. But that's one reason for the time to wait to January. Commissioners, just real quickly going through the projected refunding transactions by systems. You can see on the left-hand side of the chart the bonds to be refunded by division. And again, I'll point out that wastewater is by far the largest at the $140 million. The others are approximately in the 10 million range. The next two columns reflect the average interest rate on the debt as it is today, and then what we are projecting with the refunding bonds. And you can see in the case of electric, gas, and water, the spread's about 170 basis points, so pretty significant. Wastewater, it's not quite as large, it's 120 basis points, or 1.2%, and that has to do with the longer life of the wastewater bonds relative to electric, gas, and water. The net present value savings total 13.2 million. Again, almost all of it's in the wastewater division, as you would expect. I also show the savings as a percentage of the principal amount of the refunded bonds. Our debt management policy requires to go forward with the refunding that basically this percentage has to be 3% or greater. And you can see in each case it's quite a bit in excess of that 3% threshold. And then the final column is our estimated cost of issuance. Those are the professional fees that we pay financial advisor, bond counsel, rating agencies, etc. And in total, $500,000 is what I'm projecting. And that's about 1/3 of 1% of the bonds to be sold. And that's consistent with past practice, and that is very competitive. Any questions on that?
Is that fee comparable to a new bond issue fee, or is it higher or lower?
It's going to be a little bit higher because of the advanced refunding, because you have escrow agreements that have to be prepared as well. It's a little bit more complex with an advanced refunding as opposed to a new money bond issue. So they are going to be slightly higher than other ones.
And the $13.2 million the savings that we can realize on arbitrage for the year, what is that calculated into that, or is that going to be is that number going to be reduced by the difference in the spread?
That includes everything.
So that's a net.
That is a true net. It excludes issuance cost. It excludes everything as far as.
So the issuance cost has already been reduced.
That is correct. Yes, yes, that is right now the net present value bottom line. Okay. Commissioners, real quickly, I need to run or go over with you each specific refunding bond series and what we're proposing for that and the projected maturity schedule. For the electric refunding bonds, we're requesting authority to issue up to $11.3 million in bonds. Roughly $10 million of that would go to refund the outstanding principal. But because this is going to be an escrow and we have an escrow period of 2 years plus, those refunded bonds are going to have interest payments that come due during that period of time. So the bond proceeds will pay those as well. So an additional $1 million is built in to cover those interest payments, and then also dollars to cover the underwriter's fee and then those issuance costs that we just talked about. The proposed maturity schedule is on the right-hand side of the chart, and you can see the graph. I'll just point out a couple of things there. The maturities range from principal would be paid back 2013, and that actually represents 2032 there, so roughly a 20-year payback period. That is identical to the bonds that are being refunded. So again, the principal, though it's going to be differing amounts, it's in proportion to the bonds being refunded. Again, we're not really changing the life of the debt. We're certainly not extending it. And then also, and you'll see this on each chart, I'll point it out here, the little yellow portion of the bars there, that is the savings by year. And total for electric, approximately $800,000 and $600,000 MPV. I've got 3 more charts that look just like this, so I'll try and go through it quickly. For gas, we're requesting authority to issue up to $13.5 million, $12 million roughly to refund the principal, a little over $1 million to cover those 4 interest payments over the period of escrow, then the underwriter's fee and issuance cost. Again, you see the debt service schedule. Again, this one 2013 through 2031, so roughly 20 years again. Total savings $1.1 million, $800,000 MPV. Water, request authority up to $10.7 million, $9.5 to refund the principal, $1 million to cover those interest payments. And I know the proposed maturity schedule may look a little odd when you see that on the outer years, but that's what we're refunding. Again, we're not really changing the maturity structure at all. That's why it looks the way it does. On the wastewater bonds, here you've got the big one. We are requesting authority to issue up 100 to 157 million in bonds, 140 million to retire that principal. Now the interest payments, because that principal is so large, we'll have 5 interest payments during the escrow period, and they're about $3.3 million each. So you see a pretty decent sized number to cover those interest payments during that period of time. And then also because the principal amount is so large on the new bonds, the underwriter's fee will be larger and the issuance cost will be larger, and we saw that on the previous chart. And you see the maturity schedule. This debt goes out longer, as you would expect with wastewater. And again, we're keeping in step with the bonds that are going to be refunded as far as the length of the maturity schedule. Total savings almost 17 million, 11 million net present value.
I'm just, as usual, confused, but are we adding $20 million in debt to the original 171 million?
They would to cover those interest payments, yes, sir.
So, at the end of the day, we're gonna have to pay back an additional $20 million.
There will be an interest expense associated with that, but that's just replacing what we would have paid anyway. It's just going into a financing. It's going to be financed as opposed to otherwise.
I think the answer to his question is no. He's asking, we had the debt, now do we have 20 million on top of that? No, it's just paid in a different vehicle.
Well, correct. We have 140 million in wastewater today. To refinance that and cover those interest payments that we're going to make anyway, that we would have made anyway, it's now going to be financed as part of the bond issue. So we're not taking on any additional expenses per se, other than some interest costs.